Hello, this is Alice Wheaton. Thank you for joining me today on another webinar. And the webinar we're going to talk about today is leadership, but it's a different kind of leadership. I'm calling it servant leadership. And I came across this style of leadership in my consciousness a few years ago when I decided to walk the Camino. For those of you who haven't heard about that, the El Camino de Santiago de Compostela is about a 1,400-year-old pilgrimage across Spain. It is based on the legend that the body of St. James, Jesus' half-brother, is buried at the cathedral in Santiago. And I walked from France to Santiago, and I'd like to share some of that stories with you and some of the lessons learned along the way and some of the leaders that I met that were influential for me. I'd like to dedicate the presentation to a gentleman that I walked the Camino with for a while. He had had cancer, and he was walking to give thanks for his recovery. But as you can see, there is cancer returned, and he passed away in 2005. We walked the Camino in 2004, September 2004. So who are the modern-day pilgrims? Well, it's anyone, really, that sets out on a quest for something conceived as sacred, those who are seekers of meaning. And when I think about pilgrims, I always think of parents. Well, when we decide to be a parent, we're really setting out on a quest. And being a pilgrimage, we want to do the best we can at all times. And so, like modern-day pilgrims and like past pilgrims, we did the best we could, and we do the best we could. But the idea is that to have the attitude and the idea of being a pilgrim, and then to be curious about who you're going to meet on your pilgrimage path, as it were. And so about 2.5 million people a day do that. I started mine. There's 3 or 4 different junctions to join up on that Camino. And I started at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. I was in Paris, and I took the train to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and then I wanted to stay in that beautiful, beautiful town, but it was packed. So I had to head out on my own, and that's how I met Peter, and we walked together from time to time. And of those 836 kilometers, I want to tell you that most of them I was in pain. Many people did not have blisters on their feet, but I had nonstop blisters. And so the journey begins, and Spain, northern Spain, still has much of their medieval architecture and medieval buildings, and people actually live in those. And it was just beautiful. I think of the whole 30 days that I walked across Spain, I experienced rain only once. And so every town we went to always had a fountain. And for me, I'd left a dog at home. Someone was taking care of my dog, but I needed a dog fix. Every town I went into, I looked first for water and then for someone's pet to play with. Because I needed to smell a dog belly, and so I wouldn't be so homesick. Interestingly, at some towns there was a fountain that had water free and also had wine. Some people were happy about that. Here's some of the beautiful, beautiful views in Spain. At the house on the lower right, for instance, is a very old house, probably 500 years old, in its original structure, and typically the smaller section of the house is higher than the middle, which is higher than the top, because the smallest section held the livestock. The second section is where people lived, and the top part is where they stored their grains. And very few of those houses are left now, but you might see one or two in a village. The person on the left was actually, this is how he made his money. He dressed up as a very, very old, poor pilgrim. And on the left, of course, are statues, because that part of Spain is oriented towards the pilgrims walking across, even though we have hordes of pilgrims walking through a town every day, it didn't matter though, most people still closed down for their siesta. On the bottom right, it's interesting, we see here deer crossing, and in Spain you see signs that says Pellegrinos crossing, which means, of course, pilgrims. And up there you notice that there's still over 400 kilometers to go. And I tell you, that was a daunting sign because I tried to stay in denial about the number of kilometers left to go. Here's an example. I walked into a town to go to the coffee shop, and there was a pillar with a Canadian flag draped around it. And this gentleman loved women, so the women got great service at the coffee shop, but the men did not. But it's interesting, the person, Lorna, who suggested that I go on the pilgrimage, actually, he remembered her because she'd stayed 2 days in that town, I believe. So when he heard I was from Canada, well, of course, my backpack had the Canadian flag, then, of course, he wanted to know how Lorna was. Another form of servant leadership is a gentleman on the right. At the beginning of the pilgrimage, he would notice if the pilgrims were trudging through the streets with their backpack and so on, but no walking stick. So this is what he did. He would offer a walking stick free to the pilgrims. The gentleman on the left, this is in a town called Villafranca. In Villafranca, it's only about 4 or 5 days out of Santiago, and most of the albergues you have to leave by 6. So you wake up at 5:30 and you have to be gone by 6 o'clock. Whereas he created an albergue, he created a hostel-type environment where the pilgrims could stay all day if they wanted. And so we all, on the road, word of this spread on the word, so then we all organized our walk so that we could get there around 10 in the morning and chat with the other travelers from all over the world. And he had souvenirs, and he had salads, and he had served meals. We had a whole restaurant up front, sort of like a Good Earth Cafe type place. And so it was wonderful for pilgrims to be able to actually chat with each other than on the road and in coffee shops, to sit back. I believe that people don't care so much about what I have done. They care about what I can help them become. And so the pilgrimage itself, walking that 800 and some kilometers, becomes the leader. It helps bring out the best in us or the worst in us. When I started the pilgrimage, I started out with an incredible amount of fear, doubt, and insecurity because I saw lots of people who were much fitter than I was, much thinner than I was. And by the way, I did not lose any weight on the pilgrimage. And so I saw people that were runners. I saw athletes running this road as a training for the Olympics. And yet, funny enough, what would happen is that as I went through, it became clear that some of those people, despite being well-trained, despite being professional athletes, still fell by the wayside. Whereas I, with my blistered feet, I somehow managed to keep going because I found the road itself to be a leader for me. I found the road itself to be a challenging. I wanted to take that next step, in pain though it was. And boy, is that ever a metaphor for a lot of the clients I work with in their business and in their practices, growing their business, managing a family, and trying to have a part of a life. And so putting our foot forward and doing the best we can became the mantra for me. So all of us are leaders, and for sure leadership is not about positional authority, because we've probably all been around leaders who were in a position of authority, but really they mostly demotivated rather than motivated. But the best thing we can do is to be the boss of ourselves, so that we don't really need encouragement. I was talking this morning with a friend, and we were talking about acknowledgement. And when we need acknowledgement from others in order to feel happy, then we're giving a bit of power away. And so we need to be able to have self-leadership, which means that it's an inside job. And so it's important to say yes to challenge. This particular guy and his dog there, and he gave me permission to use it in the story. He, for some reason, was walking the Camino because he had done something and he wanted to repay that, pay for that, but no one had found out, and it was his own conscience anyway talking to him. But interesting, and he walked from the middle of Paris, and on the way out, he found this dog his name is Wise, that was starving and near death. And this guy nursed that dog back to health, and for days he would carry him on his back. If the dog couldn't walk any further and he needed to walk 2 more kilometers or 10 more kilometers to get to the next town to sleep that night, then he would, and very, very, very few of their gays would let him have his dog out inside. So what he would do is he would sleep next to the steps with his dog so that he didn't have to give him up. And it was awesome to see. My heart always gladdened when I saw him and Wise. And so it was great to see him with his dog, and it was hard to tell who was the leader of whom. This particular priest here on the left, the gray-haired fellow, he practiced compassionate listening. Now, he spoke very little English, but his concern was our feet. So every pilgrim that came into the door, he would make them a big pot of garlic bread soup. And you could smell that cooking miles away. And so he believed that that had healing properties. And so this was the only place to stay at night in this monastery. So we would always stay there. And so pilgrims always stayed there rather than go on, because they wanted to experience the love that this man had. It was amazing. He would rub our feet, and he would talk away in Spanish, and you could tell that it was encouraging and that he was blessing us. Although he'd been retired for years, he was in his 80s. Here's another example of someone, I couldn't walk anymore, my feet were so bad. And so I laid down on a picnic table and had someone stop and help apply some Compeed. If you're ever in Europe or Spain especially, buy a suitcase full of Compeed, because it's the best bandages ever. Interesting, I'm going back to Spain in December, and I'm going to come back to Compeed. This is a lady. She must have been in her 70s or 80s, but her and her dog, and she was driving a tractor full of cow poop through town. And then she held the seat in that tractor as if she was the mayor of France. You could just tell that she had such a high regard for the work that she was doing and for what she was and for her abilities. And it's interesting, the dog sat next to her on the seat as if he were a passenger. Another leadership principle is to finish what you start. This was only 2 or 3 towns before my destination ended, and I wanted to quit. There's a few more. This was a beautiful cathedral. Every 4 or 5 miles there's a beautiful cathedral in Spain. And I just wanted to, and you can probably see the desperation on my face. But the thing is about self-leadership is that you're able to feel the desperation and motivate yourself to move forward anyway. Because I had been in so much pain, I often didn't take breaks for lunch or coffee. Instead, what I would do is I would slow down to a snail's pace and shuffle my way. And this was an Olympic team from Italy, and I had a knapsack with a Canadian flag on it. And as they passed me, as they did several times a day, they would sing, "Oh, Canada." Oh, no, sorry, they would say, "Go, Canada, go, go, Canada, go." And on my very last day, they passed me about, I don't know, noon. And then as I came over the hill and saw the sign to Santiago, they'd been waiting for me for 2 or 3 hours. And as I came over the crest of the hill, they began to sing, "Oh, Canada." And they sang, "Oh, Canada," in perfect harmony and in the entire words. I guess they'd been memorizing it all along. I was extremely overwhelmed with emotion at that time, and I tend to be more stoic and practical, but I tell you, I was weeping when I made it across the road to them. If you look on the next to the left there, you'll see a slide with kilometer 83. At the 100th kilometer mark, what happens is that every single kilometer is marked by a marker which says 100, 99, 98, so on. And at that point, you're invited to begin to take your troubles that you came with and leave them on the markers. So you pick up a stone and you put your troubles there. And even though we didn't believe it, we all did it. And after all, why not? In addition, I had found out that when you start the Camino, no matter how many sins you have, they're all forgiven once you enter the sanctuary, the Santiago Cathedral. And knowing that, I was walking through grape country, so I began to eat all of the grapes that I wanted to eat. Before that, I'd practiced some decorum. But once I knew I was going to be forgiven, I just ate them all, as much as I wanted. And so what stops us from going on our particular journey? You see that fear, passion, courage, imperfect action, confidence. What happens is that most people want to feel confident first. Confidence is the last to come. We can't possibly feel confident until we're competent. And so when we feel passion is a 2,000-year-old word from the Passion of the Christ, and it means the willingness to suffer and die for your cause. And so I believe that in today's translation, it would mean to pay the price and feel the pain in order to achieve your goal. And I kept that in mind as I wanted to quit many times, is I just had to finish my goal. And so knowing that, then what happens is I become competent. I now never worry about confidence. Am I confident? Am I not confident? Who the heck has enough anyway? I don't. I just take that next step. And you know, the Camino, trudging through the Camino has made a great deal of difference for me on that. So every chain has a weak link. And whenever I was with a group of people on the Camino, I was the weakest link. But generally speaking, there was always someone there that would help. On the left side there, you can see just a sense of what the blisters were like on my feet. Not that I'm sure you want to walk too long. There was one day when I had to take a bus from one town to the next, and it was about 15 kilometers. And I just couldn't walk that because the blisters, one of the blisters had become infected, and there was now having pain going up my leg. So I had to take it to the next town, see a doctor, and go on some antibiotics. And of course, I got on that bus so full of shame, so full of self-recrimination, and only to see 2 other pilgrims already sitting there. And they informed me that they'd been on the bus for a couple of days, so I didn't feel so bad. But here you are, you can see that we're now 326 kilometers to Santiago. I was in this ditch one day trying to get my feet to stop paining, and a priest happened by, and he gave me a medallion of St. Jude. St. Jude is the a saint of desperate causes. And so there, I guess he thought seeing somebody in a ditch had to be desperate to do that. So he gave me it gave me some comfort to pray that prayer of St. Jude. I have to say I don't remember it now, but it gave me some comfort, even though nothing much changed until I changed my shoes on the second last day. So being a leader means we study, we practice, we follow continuous education, because life is always in a state of improvement. So we need to always be optimizing the processes we use. Therefore, we need to optimize ourselves. I used to be a cardiac surgery nurse 40 years ago. Guess what? Back then, we were always looking for ways to increase the efficiency and the effectiveness of cardiac surgery and cardiac care, and it's the same today. And so why would we look at improving processes if we don't look at improving ourselves? So that's why I'm going on another journey this December, going to India and Sri Lanka. So this was in a town called Villafranca, and the myth is that if you can't make it all the way to Santiago, and it's another 150 kilometers to Santiago, thereabouts from here, then if you can crawl over this wall, and it's only 3 feet high, and crawl over the steps into the cathedral. This is not the main entrance to the cathedral, as you can imagine, it's at the front. But if you can manage to crawl this way, then you will be granted the same kind of forgiveness as you would in Santiago. You know, some people say you can't love others until you love yourself. I don't believe that. For me, taking care of others was a way to take care of myself. For me, taking care of others built the bridge to me, to my heart, to my brain, to my spirit. And so when I saw all these servants, all these people on the road that were willing to make a difference for me, it really, and there was nothing in it for them. They would not remember me personally or anyone personally. They were just handing out sticks or handing out cups of soups or massaging seats for people along the way to enjoy. And you know, that's what being a servant leader is all about. And the more we are a servant leader, the more we take care of others. The more we take care of others, the more competent we become. That's been my journey anyway. I'm not advocating codependency. I'm not advocating tolerating the intolerable or accepting the unacceptable. I'm not advocating that. I am advocating, though, that give first, share first, love first. The journey's in. Well, there I am back in Santiago in the church. It's crowded. And then I decided to go to Fatima, which is in Portugal. And so once I got to Fatima, then what happened is that I saw people taking their pilgrimage to a whole new level. There are some people who crawl on their knees to this particular cathedral. And probably for good reason. I attended the Mass there in Portuguese, and I was interested. I had developed a terrible bronchitis after the Santiago Camino pilgrimage, and developed terrible bronchitis. I walked into that cathedral, listened to the sermon, and on the way out there's a bowl of holy water, and I just stuck my whole hands in it, and I went and flung it on my chest and said, "What the hell, it won't hurt." And honest to goodness, I have to tell you, the bronchitis disappeared immediately. Now, I get really, really bad bronchitis. I was coughing and coughing and coughing. I was in bed, and someone had coerced me to get out of bed. Actually, the receptionist at the hotel had coerced me to get out of bed because I was so close to Fatima. And when I returned to the hotel, I was completely cured. I have no idea. I can't answer it. And I wasn't particularly righteous when because I flung it on and said, "What the hell, it can't hurt." But there you are, the power of the mind and the power of healing, I guess. So when you get to the cathedral, there's what it looks like. The great big columns are worn away from centuries of pilgrims kneeling and giving thanks. So what is your pilgrimage? Where is your path taking you? What is your next step? If you don't have the courage to take a big jump, find the courage to make a small jump. And if you can't jump with courage, then jump with fear. I know that that's often worked for me. So I want to thank you for being a great audience today, being a captive audience. And I want to encourage you to do the El Camino Santiago pilgrimage. And if not, then find your own particular pilgrimage. Maybe it's going back to school and finishing your degree. Maybe it's going back to school and getting your degree. Maybe it's switching from a university degree and becoming an electrician. There's lots of opportunities. And I want to wish you the very best. Bye for now.